И наш следующий.
And our next presenter is Aleksandr Nikitin. He is going to tell us about the migration of the databases of the Zabbix database from Oracle to PostgreSQL. Hello. As has already been said, my name is Aleksandr Nikitin, and I work in a large company of the Center of the Financial Technologies in the department that is working with the outsourcing of databases to outside banks. And in my today's presentation, I'm going to talk about how Zabbix appeared in our company, how we were conducting the analysis of migration paths, how we actually were doing the migration itself, how we tested it, and everything else that you can see written down on this slide. Now, I want to say for all of you who want to download this presentation, on the final slide you will have a QR code which you will be able to use, and if you follow this link you will have both the presentation and the scripts that are being used in terms of the preparation for this presentation. Now, how did Zabbix appear? In 2014, in our company, in our department, one of the employees of our departments has offered to implement Zabbix within our department to monitor all the databases that we have. And we have a fair amount of them. The experience turned out to be successful, and as of March 2019, our Zabbix grew to a fairly large size. We have 3,000 MPS, so approximately 2 terabytes of database, 650,000 items, and this was a snowball growth, and this is where we stopped. We've started running into issues. We started running into performance issues. As best we could, we tried to solve them, and in part we were able to solve them. We were indexing, we were partitioning, we were undertaking some other actions, and at the end of the day it started to work. And we were continuously setting it up and tweaking it, but then we encountered a problem yet again. But these problems were of a different nature. When we addressed the technical support of Zabbix, they told us that if your database is on Oracle, then you're not going to get any technical support. So either migrate to PostgreSQL or to MySQL. We gave it a thought and decided, okay, we got to shift. And so in October 2019, we set up the task to actually shift to a different database. When a certain task appears in front of you, what do you do first of all? You go online and you start looking. Did anybody do a similar thing before you did? Now, we were lucky, and we found a tool, this Or2PG. More over than that, on the Hopper, there was a great article regarding how you can migrate a database from Oracle to Postgres. We have looked at all the videos, on YouTube, on Postgres, from all the previous conferences of these years. There was a number of interesting things. We've also heard this Antler, a great tool. We did not use it, but if you will require a wish or a necessity to migrate, then I do advise you to look at both of these. Or2PG was enough for us. In of itself, Or2PG is a very simple application. You create a project, you set the parameters of your file, of the connection with one database and another database, and you just launch the conversion. The conversion can be launched in a variety of ways. You can also use pre-release. In the article that was described earlier by the link, so nothing was mentioned about pre-release. So when we were just launching it, we did it without a parallel path, and so everything turned out to be, just put it, very long. And so what do we have? We have Or2PG, which is able to transfer both the plan and the data. Fairly quickly, we came to a realization that if we transfer both the plans and the database as it was in the Oracle after our additions, then Zabbix, the main issue was to do with the fact that when we're processing data in Oracle and when we're doing some of our own additions, later when we wanted to upgrade the Zabbix to a newer version, he said that I did not know this database, and he continuously gave us a mistake, so we could never go a level up. And we fairly quickly came to a thought that this plan of our database should not be taken from our database, but we should take the one that is offered by Zabbix itself, but for Postgres, and to use or to PG only to transfer the data. And it seems easy. And of course, I wouldn't be making the presentation unless we ran into issues. So the very first rake, like a rake issue, the first rake that we ran into. Now I wanted you to tell me what went wrong here. Unfortunately, I can't hear you, even if you're saying it because it's without a microphone. But nevertheless, let's just look at this line, because it turns out that in PostgreSQL, they are using a data type which has 16 characters and 4 characters after the comma. For the Oracle databases in Zabbix, they use 20 and 4. We have encountered the fact that when we were transferring the data from Oracle to Postgres, some data was just left out. And this was very surprising, because we look at the documentation from the Zabbix itself, and we look at, for example, for MySQL, for PostgreSQL, for B2, and so on. For everybody, they have 16 and 4, and Oracle is the only one that has the 20 and 4 digits. And we have encountered this. This was truly very unusual. And I talked to the representative from Zabbix who were standing in the corridors and the halls of this conference. They were unable to explain the reasons for this, but they said that starting from 5 version and up, they're bringing all this data into a uniform standard, so everything is going to be the same now. And so we are continuing the migration. And what did we continue with? After we have discovered this, we required to change the script of the creation of the database. So where in Postgres we would have 16 and 4, we had to now do the exact same thing, but for it to be with 20 and 4. Now, we changed the script. We straight away created the dump. Why did we create it? Because this process is iterative, and we had to come back to the beginning every time. And in order not to change it every time, we created a dump. And the side effect of creating a dump became the fact that it became much easier for us, much more comfortable. Now, what was this comfort seen in? Now, instead of if we are to look at the data from Zabbix itself, we are meant to have a table, and underneath it you have the indices that belong to this table. Then you have the next table, then the next indices, and so on and so on and so on. Now, when we are talking about PG dump, first it creates all the tables, and only then it creates all the indices. And this is very comfortable, because if you are to transfer a lot of data and to transfer the data in tables that already have indices, it is much longer than to first transfer all the tables without indices and then to build new indices on the transfer data. And this is what we used. The file that we have had as a result on the work of PGDump, we divided it into 2. And now the rake, or the mistake, number 2, which we have encountered. Now let's have a look, and maybe you can tell me what could go wrong here. You are exactly right. As was already previously mentioned on this conference, the node for the text fields in Oracle and Postgres are completely different, and we have seen that there are limits in Postgres which are not present in Oracle. So what do we have to do? We had to remove the limits in Postgres. We removed the limits, but if you think that this was it, you are once again mistaken. We had 37 of these tables, and we had 185 fields, so we had to find each single one of them and to remove the limit in each one of them. This is very difficult to do manually, but we did it. We created the script before insert, which removes these limitations, and then we assumed that we're going to import and then create a script for the after insert. So we are going to change the values that is going to be eaten up by Postgres, so the empty lines or whatever else, and we're going to bring these limits back in. After this, we require to create the indices. Remember, we divided the file into 2 parts, first by creating the tables, then creating the indices. Remembering the indices, we create them. Now, apart from this, in our history text, and this is the table in Zabbix, which contains the information in the data call file, we had a huge amount of lines, 218 million to be exact. And even in the most favorable of circumstances, the migration of our database from the Oracle to Postgres would take us an approximation of 2 days. 2 days. So 48 hours. So what do we have? A full migration takes up 2/5 days. Now, why do we have 5 days here as a number? The thing is that if we are to follow the article that we were following, there was nothing about this. But when you're solving the new task, you just want it to work. And only if you understand that generally everything is working out, then you can start to try and speed up the process. And we started speeding it up. We managed to speed up to 2 days. We told this to our head office. We said, hey, this is how long it takes. They said no. They told us, hey, let's do it like this. We're going to leave the Oracle database as it is, and we're just going to transfer the metadata, the host, some of the settings, into the Postgres database. And this approach allowed us to reduce the time of transfer to 30/40 minutes. So what did this 30-40 minutes include? Now, we had to stop the Oracle database. Of course, the backend stops as well, and so the Oracle database stops. We create a dump. The dump is then transferred into migration machine, and then there the migration takes place. There, the amount of lines in one database and another database are compared. Now, after this replica on Postgres is created, and all of this takes up approximately 30-40 minutes. After we have transferred everything and launched it, it turned out that it does work, but it works very slow. On the lower graph, you can see the PostgreSQL one. The brown ones are the polders, and they went down really bad. In Oracle, we had this in 2-3 minutes after we started. Like in 2-3 minutes, you see them go down, and then go up and then go down after 2-3 minutes. In Postgres, we were waiting for this to happen, expecting, and it never did. Now, moving on. What can we do in this case? We have to somehow tune our database. Here we're working with Monsu. We have the tune and report. We already had a presentation on this utility. And now this allows us to tune the configuration files of Postgres and the system files. Now, apart from this, a great utility is this one, the PG configurator. It helped us a lot. There you are able to move some little things, and on the right-hand side you will have the text appearing of the parameters that you need to change in the varying schemes that you may require. And now you can't just do this out of the bloom. So we started to read up on the documentation. We read the documentation on everything, on all the parameters in the configuration file, and only after that we started to apply it. Maybe basically during just a week before this presentation, we seen the link to the site in our Telegram chat that we're all using. This is a great site, I think, and when I was reading, we had no site like this, and we just had to read plain text. But here, everything is very well deconstructed, and you can use it, so please do it. All the parameters that you need are already listed here. So, after we have changed and adjusted certain parameters, we have disabled the synchronous commit, everything became more or less okay. Well, it lowered down to a level that was acceptable to us, and it remained on that level for some time. Now, after we have upgraded, yes, and of course the upgrade became available for us to version 4, and there everything became much better. And I think this image, if I'm not mistaken, we even have this with the 3rd version. So we were trying to adjust the parameters, and we managed to optimize them to here. In the 4th version, all the graphs became even better because the optimization works really well. So if you still have the 3rd version of Zabbix, do switch to version 4 because it is much faster. Now, replication. Now, we're using the on-the-flow replication with the help of SWAT-I replication, a great presentation from 2017 by Aleksandr Nikitin, who delved into this issue. But when I was reading my presentation for the very first time within my own company, I said that, hey, look, everything is good. But the reality is that everything is indeed good, but we have encountered the following peculiarity. And now I'm going to change this, and now follow my hands. Now this is the active database, it's huge and everything else. And then after some time, the replica that we had from it turned bad for certain reasons. And we had to remake this replica. So what do? We say, hey, go over here and get all this stuff. Just create a replica from this one. If you just launch this, it's going to really load up the server. So we were launching it with a certain limitation on the amount of possible load at the same time, and the replica was done in 13 hours. In 1 hour, we have approximately 20 gigabytes of vlogs generated. So here, and while this replication is taking place, all of the val logs throughout these replications are passed down here. So they're all present there. Here, we have the val logs retained for just 1 hour. So I did the replication here, and I think, okay, now it's all going to roll in, and it's going to start to go through the replication process. So 300 gigabytes of val logs were being rolled up over 3 hours. While this has been happening, this is all moving forward, and then the SWOT replication didn't actually take place. And when he said, hey, can I have the vlogs now? The vlogs were already gone from the first place, and so we had to relaunch this entire operation. And this, I think, is a cornerstone case, and possibly you will never run into this, but know that if your vlog size is big, then here you need to maintain them for longer than just for 1 hour. You need to make sure that at least temporarily they're capped for the amount of time that your replica needs to make the replica. Now, we tried to use partitioning, and we looked at a standard approach, the PG-Pasman, PG-Parkman, and we have left the standard approach for the threads. And the PG-Pasman is the one that we use in order to create the daily partitions on the history table. We could not use the PG-Pasman for the trends because it continuously gave us an error. He needed for us to have an index that the partition and the sectioning is going to actually be happening. It needed to be number 1, but we had it as number 2. So now the extensions that we used. The extension that we used for work is mcheck, and that allows us to check the logical coherency of the entire indices inside a database. And you can use or not use. This is just to defend from brute force. Now PG stat statements, PG rearm, in order to heat up the cache inside the database. So it turns out that once in a while it throws down all the cache into the file. And so, for example, you stopped the database and it would go back in and put it all there. So everything from that file is already warmed up. And then PG profile, which has already been mentioned, has been already mentioned on this conference, and PG Pathman. And everything is great, but PG pre-warm has started behaving itself very peculiarly. Now, was it useful or not is hard to say at this point in time, but the fact that our disks went into the top of its reading capacities for some time, we noticed this, but after we removed PG pre-warm, everything went back to normal. So, well, PG pre-warm is a good thing, but you need to evaluate, are you actually going to use it or not? Because if you are not, just make sure you are aware. And now the additional software that we use, the PG Sender from Alexey Lisovsky, now we use it and we like it very much. PG Bouncer, well, this is standard. PG Pro Backup, and this is a great utility for copying. We are in very close connection with its developers. On its utility, we have found a number of interesting options of how we can work in it. Now, Ash Viewer, probably you know this utility when you're working with Oracle, because this allows to get all these beautiful graphs up, to look at all the queries coming in. Approximately a year ago, it has been rewritten for Postgres, and now you can also use it there. The graphs are actually very beautiful and allow you to track a lot of things. And PG Admin, well, we just launched it, we just installed it because everybody says that, wait, you need it if you have Postgres. Well, yeah, we got it, but it's not disturbing us. Well, I'm not really using it. PGSQL, PG Center, I think these two are enough. And now, in my presentation, we have looked at the following questions regarding how Zabbix appeared in our company, how we conducted the analysis of the ways of migration, the migration itself, the testing, how we were putting up the settings, how we're replicating, how we're conducting the partitioning, how we're looking at the extensions and any additional software that we used. And I hope that after this presentation, if you are going to have a wish or a necessity to transfer your database of Zabbix, and specifically Zabbix from Oracle to Postgres, you are going to have a lot less questions than we did when we were doing it. Now, on this QR code, you'll be able to download the scripts of the before and after updates, the presentation, and the creation of indices, and everything else that you may require. And I am ready to answer your questions. So please raise your hands if you have questions. I'm sure that somebody has an Oracle database somewhere that needs to be converted into Postgres. Thank you very much for the presentation. We know you, CFT, and you already have that you've already migrated with Zabbix. And how do you intend to transfer the actual software of CFT to transfer it from Oracle to Postgres? Okay, so look, approximately 2 months ago, the main engineer, the main architect of our company has given a presentation on how this can take place. Now, they have taken a small bit of our IPSO and they started to transfer it from Oracle to Postgres. And the general conclusion was the following, that generally it is possible to transfer, but the load on the CPU is going to be somewhat higher than what it is right now in the Oracle. But there is a lot of rewriting that we'll have to do, so they've left it as a start. They've shown that it is possible. They've conducted the tests. But will we actually get to rewriting this entire thing to PostgreSQL? I'm not sure. This is just a huge volume of work. So I cannot give you any expectations regarding this. But you do have a version, the next version, that you have already moved all the procedures that were saved to outside applications, and you're just using databases storage. So could you not use this along with it? Maybe it is possible, but you understand, it's not just my level of understanding, because we work with banks. So my department, I work in a department which outsources banks. So what we work with, what we outsource, that's what we work with. But what is happening up there in top, what are they planning to go to, which model, I don't have access to this. Our company is large. We have an organization of over 3,000 people, so who is planning to do what, I have no knowledge on this. So well, if somebody is shy to ask the question, then you can ask them on the floor in private. So thank you very much for a very interesting presentation.